Hail, hail. Good evening, folks, and welcome along to this special rewind episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. My name's Anthony, one of the show's contributors I'll be hosting tonight. Delighted to be joined by one of the show regulars, the league leader in the Super Six, Mr. Francis Carey. How are you, sir?
All good, Anthony. It was not just me that was extending the league at the weekend. It was me and Celtic.
2 weeks in a row we've been able to use that pattern now, isn't it? Tell you, as long as they keep dropping points, I'm happy to say it every week.
Correct.
And joining us also from our friends at the Bhoys, it's the one and only Mr. Nostalgia himself, Mr. Phil McGinley. How are you, my friend?
I'm smashing, Anthony, mate. Cheers for having me on again. Always happy to come on and talk about Celtic, especially in some sort of retro capacity. It seems to be my thing. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to be on, mate.
Even Monty's noticing you're on several channels at the minute, mate. But it's always good to have, it's your sort of niche on the Boise bus, so it's always good to have your expertise on. And as we go through the rewind series, obviously we normally on a Monday night would discuss the events the previous weekend, but it's something that the boys covered a lot on the Endless Celts first post-match reaction show, which we did on Saturday. It's had a great sort of reaction to it and views as well. So we thought, rather than go over old ground, why not get some more of these rewind episodes out the way, because we've got a few more to get through before the end of the season. This is the series Champions League Rewind, where we go back. Since we were back in the tournament this year, we thought, why not go back down memory lane and to all the years gone by when we've previously competed in the tournament. So we're up to season 2004, 2005. For many, when we first think about it, you always think that it was the first time we finished fourth, and you'd think it would be a pretty poor tournament with not much to look back on. But as me and Phil were discussing off here, when you look back over the events of the 6 games, that is absolutely not the case. So we're looking forward to getting stuck in. And evening to everyone in the chat. Stephen's going to be backstage. He's kind of keeping on top of all the comments, etc. So he'll bring them up and get involved in the discussion as well. And just before we get started, it's just again a thanks to our sponsors, Beer 52. Again, I think the code is still live. If you want to get a box of beer, just go onto the website and use our code CELTS, and you can get yourself a wee box of goodies. And it wouldn't be a Monday night show without us letting you guys know about the extension of Franny's lead in the Super Six. So in 5th place at the minute, it's Ryan Taylor on 175, Jamie Latimer's 4th on 176, Kevin Hampsey on 180 in 3rd place, and James Bowie on 181 in 2nd. But a whopping 20 points in front is the man sporting the away kit for the season that we're just about to talk about, Mr. Francis Carty himself. So well done, mate. You're doing really well at the moment, has to be said. I'm languishing. I'm like Southampton this season. I'm way off. I just stopped looking about 2 months ago. So after all that, let's get stuck into the subject at hand. Season 04-05, the Champions League. Phil, I'm going to come to you first. We'll sort of set the scene, as it were. Going into the campaign, there was no qualifiers that year due to us winning the title the year before in pretty spectacular, relentless fashion. And we also added the Scottish Cup as well, first league and Scottish Cup double since the centenary season. And of course, Martin O'Neill was still in the dugout, which was great, as were many of the Seville squad. But of course, there was one huge hole in the up front, and that was the departure of Henrik too. What we've learned that was going to be one of our opponents in the group, Barcelona. We obviously brought in the likes of Juninho and Henri Camara, and later on in the season we then tried to replace the two of them with Craig Bellamy, where you could argue better success. But despite the fact that Henrik had left, morale was still pretty high. This was we'd had previous seasons in the Champions League under Martin. We'd obviously been to the UEFA Cup final 2 years before, and then we had a very good start, as we spoke about the last time you were on the Rewind show, when we got to the quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup after beating Barcelona in the last 16. So it was still very much a time of we feared nobody. We definitely had our swagger back in with regards to Europe.
It was because it's very, very hard to replace somebody like Henrik Larsson, although he did give us very kindly a year's notice, essentially. And, you'd think the Celtic board would would do good with 12 months, to deal with that and find a suitable replacement. But obviously that didn't quite materialise. But I think the mood was quite high because before we played any European games that season, we had our first big test against Rangers, which we won. Remember that was the Al Thompson goal from outside the box, pings it in off the crossbar. So yeah, even that was Mourinho's debut. Who that was like he peaked in his very first game, and it seemed to start going downhill right after it. But it did put you like, okay, well, we've got to the quarterfinals of the UEFA Cup the last season. I know Larsson's left, but Mourinho's came in. We beat Rangers in the first meeting of the season. He's looked pretty good. Yeah, we've still got a good home record at this point. God, what we would give to have that now. And yeah, going into the draw, even though it had Barcelona and AC Milan, we still thought, no, we can rattle a few cages here, definitely. I remember at the time being pretty confident as well.
That's it, Franny. I mean, if we were to get a group like that now, or even not perhaps quite as strong as that, we still kind of would have the head and hands type moment. But we have to say, perhaps if there's a few of the younger viewers in, at that time, AC Milan were the absolute top dogs. They are perhaps, the Man City of today with added European Cups. They really were a formidable force. And if John, one of our show regulars, was on, and hi to John, he's a massive fan of AC Milan, especially Shevchenko, Kaká, all the guys from that era. But having said all that, despite how high morale was at the time, Franny, were you confident of getting any results against AC Milan, Barcelona, and the oil-rich Shakhtar Donetsk?
I think, like Phil said, back then it was almost a given 3 points at home. You almost banked on them, and it was always you looked at going, when can I get a point away? Because 10 points pretty much guaranteed you to go through. Didn't really matter how it worked out. So you're always looking at the away games to try and pick something up, but I think back then, Martin O'Neill and his team, there was guys, I know Larsson had left, but leading up to that, obviously had guys like Larsson, Thompson, Hartson, Sutton, Petrov, Baldy, you riding them off, it was guys that you could hang your hat on, like Valharan, that you just, top internationals playing at a lot of international football and stuff, so it was guys that you thought, you can get anybody a game on their day, and especially at Parkhead and with that crowd and stuff under the lights, and you had obviously the emerging talent like McGeady and things like that just kind of come to the fore. It was always got to, under Martin O'Neill, I think you had the confidence going into any European tie at Parkhead. I mean, any game, but especially at home at Parkhead, even against, like you say, AC Milan back then, who Kaká was just kind of coming onto the scene then, but they still had Shevchenko, Pippo, and Zaghi, who I think got caught offside the same amount of times he scored. Man, it was unreal, but he would hate VAR. He would never have coped under VAR. Never, man. Never.
Yeah. Born offside.
Oh, he was born offside, but what a finisher out was, man. Right. And like you say, Pirlo, Seedorf, man. I mean, Clarence Seedorf probably doesn't get the credit he deserves. Guys, and like you say, Nesta, Maldini and all that at the back. Right off. Dida, who was probably the most overrated keeper gone, but and him as well, who was the Brazilian number one. That AC Milan team was ridiculous back then. Absolutely.
Yeah, but obviously when you think back, obviously they got to the final that season. We're just about to discuss, and had it not been for something pretty unprecedented, then they would have won it, and obviously did again 2 years later, before they sort of fell from grace a little bit. But yeah, that was the draw, guys. Group F, we were drawn in as the pot 3 side that season, as not only as domestic champions, but obviously our previous exploits for the seasons gone by put us in the pot 3. So we were, like we say, very much fancying our chances against the very unknown team of Shakhtar Donetsk, although it became pretty quickly we realised that these guys were not buying it. They weren't owned by any kind of paupers. They were oil rich and they were ready to spend. There was no sort of work permit regulations or that back then. They were able to sign some top quality players, and but at the time we were blissfully unaware of what was to come. But we'll take it to the opening night. As I say, we're drawn AC Milan and Barcelona. The first game was at home against the Catalan Giants. Of course, they were a great side. We had actually just in the same calendar year had knocked them out of the old UEFA Cup. So Ronaldinho, Saviola, etc. were still kings of the new camp back then. But that summer they had been on a rather big spending spree, had brought in the likes of Deco, Samuel Eto'o, and of course the King of Kings himself, amongst others. They were planning to have a real assault on Europe, and whilst they came up short this season, they obviously went and won the tournament in Paris the year later. So this was the beginning of a very strong Barcelona side that you could argue, ruled the kind of late noughties and into the 2000s as well. And but as we have previously mentioned, morale was high. We more than fancied ourselves against this team. But we went down to an early goal through Deco, our old foe from Seville, and Porto. He opened the scoring, and but after that, it was pretty much relatively even Steven in the first half. David Marshall in goals for Celtic at that time made a couple of decent saves, and the old stalwarts kept things ticking over and creating chances for Celtic at the other end. But we went in at half-time, a goal behind, and feeling the stadium atmosphere, for what I remember, was a bit flat at that point. And then it sort of went even more quieter when we conceded a penalty early in the second half. But as he was quite prone to doing at that point, David Marshall was performing heroics against the Barcelona again. He made a great save from Ronaldinho, and moments later, Celtic equalised, Phil, and it pretty much felt at that point that it was going to be business as usual, and that we were at that point in the game, there was only going to be one winner.
I start to believe at that point. I missed penalty and then getting an equaliser, but it's some goal from Chris Sutton. It's a great ball across, and it's that slide tackle finish that we spoke about many times. But strangely, he doesn't just basically slide tackle in the direction into the net. He puts it the other way up into the top corner, the opposite way that it came from. It's an incredible finish, and the noise around the stadium. The people did believe. So you just feel like something's in the air at that point. And we've only beaten them just a few months before, but strangely, in that short time, they've got even stronger while it feels like we've got weaker. And one of the players that they've got and to get stronger is obviously our star man that's made us weaker. So that's quite incredible that they've done that. And they also got to remember Ludovic Julie, he got to the Champions League final with Monaco that year as well in 2004. So he was a bit of a superstar that they brought in. But at that point though, we just didn't fear anybody. And that finish by Sutton is underrated. I think. I don't think it gets enough credit. It's phenomenal way he slides in, puts it in the opposite corner. But the noise and the buzz around the place, you're like, okay, we've got them rattled now. But of course, it didn't quite go that way, sadly.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I remember after the goal went in, as I say, everyone just thought, it was the usual bedlam at Parkhead on a European night. But for a good 5-10 minutes after that, we absolutely battered them. And there's two, whenever I think of Victor Valdez, the Barcelona keeper, there's two saves that I vividly remember, and they're both up that side of the park. One of them comes for this game, the other one comes not the season that we beat them under Lenny in 2012, but it was the following year. But it was a different type of save, but it was equally as miraculous. But in this game, it was, I can't remember exactly how the passage of play happened, but essentially Petrov at the edge of the box flicked the ball over a Barcelona defender with his right foot and caught it absolute point blank with his left, heading for the top corner. He couldn't have done any better, and somehow Valdez got there and tipped it over the bar. And whenever I think back, I went, God, if that had went in, maybe it would have been a different story that night, because the roof would have came off. We were just so on top of them at that point. Yeah. But then they responded by taking off Ronaldinho and bringing on a superior replacement in Henrik Larsson, Francis. And of course, after that, we did look at the aforementioned Julie, as you say, Phil. Scored a kind of deflected effort that just sneaked under Marshall to make it 2-1, and that kind of really deflated us. And then you'll remember this one well, Francis, and just a poor back header from Alan Thompson. And there's only, if you're going to do a short back pass to the goalkeeper, then it's pretty obvious that the King of Kings is going to do what he's paid to do. He got on the score sheet at Celtic Park, but sadly on this occasion it wasn't in the colours of Celtic.
It was weird when it just seen him scoring against us. Absolutely weird. And like you say, it was a poor header back for Thompson. Larsson just straight on it. He actually had quite a good, wasn't a camel, because I think he was on for a good 30 odd minutes, but he actually played well off memory when he came on. I had a couple of chances where he set up things in that. And a wee bit of me, like, I think he was trying to play a wee bit deeper. I don't really think he was totally wanting involved in being further up the park. And then obviously his natural instinct when he gets that chance, he just takes it on the chest to go around Marshall and just slots into an empty net, and there's not many, like, obviously there wasn't applause, but I think there was a few claps around the stadium. I think it was one of the ones like this. They realised who it was. They know it didn't. I'm all for players.
Stephen would have been apoplectic.
I know. Oh, I'd have been raging. Like, it wasn't, the stadium wasn't going mental, but I can remember there was some quiet claps in that. And Larsson's the type of player where, like, you just need to go to, like, last night. Dan James never kicked a ball for Man United and refused to celebrate when he scored an equaliser against them. Larsson's a different, like, I can't stick that with players. Larsson's a different calibre. Gave us 7 of his best years in that. He was a great, like, our lifetime best player that I've ever seen at Celtic. So you can understand that level of player not celebrating when he scores against the next club, but it was a weird feeling just seeing Larsson score against us. It was like you say, as soon as the draw came out, it was written in the stars. It was something like that was going to happen, wasn't it?
I think he's on record now as well, Phil, is saying that it was one of the worst nights of his football career. He just didn't want to be there. He didn't enjoy it
miserable
at all. I remember watching him. He got at that when the teams were getting read out at the time. I think it was still Tony Hamilton that was reading the teams out back then, and his name got mentioned, and obviously pre the game it was unanimous applause, and he sort of, I can remember the camera sort of panning in on him, and he didn't really react at all. He just looked like he wanted to be anywhere but Celtic Park that night.
It's like what's the one in England? Remember when Van Persie went to Man United and there was the game at the end of the season where they were playing at the Emirates and Arsenal had to give them the guard of honour? Van Persie had that look on his face that night. It reminds me of that when he just looked like I'd be anywhere else right now.
End up top goal scorer that season as well.
He basically dragged Man U to that title, but going back to Arsenal, the game after they officially became champions, and you look on his face, it's one of them, I don't want to be here. This, just get me out of this scenario right now. So it reminds me of that one, but it was inevitable, wasn't it, that he was going to score? It really was. It was just written in the stars, and see, Alan Thompson must have just forgot for a second that he didn't play for us anymore, and headed it back. But I quite admire the whole, he just ran into the net, got the ball, and that was it. As Francis says, this whole like putting the hands up or sorry, it's really, to use a phrase from Still Game, birthday cared pish at times with what you see down in English Premier League, when they've had a wee brief loan spell at a team and they score against them, and then like, no celebrations. It's like, come on, it's different for Larsson. 7 amazing years at Celtic, the best player that I think easily of our generation. So yeah, it was a touch of class from him just to go into there, just get ball. But sadly, I know there was some booze on the night, which really disappoints me. And I think I seen Stephen come up in the comments saying that some people were calling him Judas for that move as well. And it's like, come on, do you want to know about Judas? We'll tell you about Judas. Will Johnston.
It was a wee bit of a redneck.
Barcelona, man. As much as we're blinded and got the green tinted glasses, a wee bit of realism here.
Yeah, and there's nobody can grudge him it either. Like you say, it was 7 majestic years he gave us. He'd more than earned his time in the sun, and I think you're bang on, Patrick. Absolutely. But so the game sort of from there naturally fizzled out. Although again, there was still that. There was still about 15 minutes to go. I think when Henrik scored, you think up the park and get another one. But back in the game here, just as it was back then. But the game finished in a 3-1 defeat. And Franny, we went back to the San Siro for match night 2 against AC Milan. And I needless to say, despite the fact that we didn't fear anybody back then, I think expectations were pretty low with regards to playing this particular AC Milan team. And you could argue that was justified when, after only 8 minutes, we went a goal behind to a great finish for Andrei Shevchenko. And you do worry that perhaps it's going to be damage limitation at this point. And then, incredibly, I remember I was working back shift that night. We heard through the real radio updates at that as it was back then, that Stanislav Varga had equalised with just over 10 minutes to go. We were going to get a first point away from home in the Champions League.
I could just remember just a corner coming in, and it was an absolute bullet, a header, absolute great header. Just there was nobody stopping him getting on the end of that. Didn't really matter. And he just, I think it was Dida that was in goals, just had absolutely no chance. And then he only went and made an arse of it no long after that and slid in for a ball that never made. And then I can't remember who it broke to. It was probably Pirlo or something. Then he just crossed it out to the guy we mentioned earlier, Pippa Inzaghi, and I'm sure he scored the winner that night. Just a wee one for about 3 yards out, but it was it was really some head on it. Like you say, 10 minutes, just hold off for 10 minutes, and we didn't, Anthony.
Well, that's the thing, Phil. We were saying about the fact that we got ourselves back into the game where we weren't expected to, and perhaps you would think, well, if they're going to lose now, they'll just they'll go up the park and do it. But we got it to the 89th minute, and we thought, what a way to really kickstart our campaign. And then perhaps, as subsequently it's happened to us in the San Siro since then against AC Milan and Champions League campaigns later on. It was just, I don't want to say it was bad game management in terms of but the sad reality is it was 2 late goals. Yes, one of them was a deflection, but if ever there was a game, I think, to sum up a lot of luck, the kind of luck we get in the Champions League, it was that game.
This is something that I've said quite a few times when it comes to Celtic, and it's not just this victim mentality that happens to your team. You think you've got the worst luck in the world, but I genuinely do believe you put our record and the things that happen to us up against any team across the continent, we've got the worst luck in the world. Only these things can happen to Celtic. You're playing that amazing AC Milan team, the Pro Evo AC Milan team, as I call them. So imagine you two gentlemen of a similar vintage to me, like about a Pro Evo from the mid-2000s. That
so superior to FIFA, it was scary.
Scary. That's what I think about when I think of that era Pro Evo. I remember that AC Milan team and the Inter team, and they were unbelievable. Oh, Adriano, 99 shot power.
Just shot for anywhere.
He was an absolute monster on the park, but we did so well. We're so close. It's like our first point away from home. We're going to actually get here. This is fantastic. After losing our home record, here we go. We're going to get a point away, and then to concede 2 goals right at the death. It's like it's bad enough if you concede 1 if we lost 2-1, but then a wee exclamation point put on it as well with that free kick from Pirlo, because you just don't give Pirlo a chance from that distance at all, because he'll ping one in. It's like, yep, this can only happen to Celtic. Add it to the Lyon one from the season before with the handball. It's like just add it to the Bayern Munich game where Magnus Edman just flapped at nothing. It just add it to the list.
I remember a lot of that was around the time when I was only 16, going on 17 with this in this campaign. But I remember a few guys that were drinking in the pub around the same time as me. That was them starting to go over like for the foreign trips and stuff away from home. And a lot of them went to Milan that year. And I remember, like, even now when we talk about it, it says there's rarely been a game where they can remember being just as pig sick as what they were that night, because they thought that was genuinely, that was the night they were going to do it, or the night when they weren't expected to get anything.
Yeah.
And it comes so close. It's Stephen's asked in the group chat, is it on the comments, is it a mindset thing? It perhaps is, Stephen. I think we've had so many of these hard luck stories that perhaps there is a little mental block there. It may well be the case. But I just wanted to, before we go any further, I noticed that Kaiser had said there that he's doing the sleep-in to raise money for the foundation. That's absolutely fantastic, mate. And if you want to put up your, if you're doing a GoFundMe or whatever, if you want to put it up in the comments, I don't know if maybe if people want to donate, they might be able to link in. It's a great cause, so well done to you. I know a few people that have done it before, and it's an amazing effort to do it. And just if there's a way where we can get some funds raised for it, then by all means, let's do it. So Phil, you're sort of saying there, as I said, 0 points from 2 games, but you perhaps sort of kind of take it into account. You go, it's Barca at home, it's AC Milan away. These guys are, even back then, they still had far greater resources than even what Martin could sort of take into in his disposal, especially when you consider the fact that we were without Henrik at this point as well. But as disappointed as we were from these 2 games, it felt the third one was really when the sort of group you felt was starting to run away with it, and you felt that it could end up being something similar to what's happened at Ibrox this season. It was a bit of a turgid first half away to Shakhtar, but we had injuries at the time during the game to Chris Sutton and Jackie McNamara, 2 absolute stalwarts of that group. And then in the second half, perhaps David Marshall's star was starting to fade a little bit after the Barcelona game at home, because a lot of them blamed him for the deflected goal in the San Siro. But he didn't cover himself in too much glory with this game, and actually I think Magnus Hedman replaced him for the final 3 games. But it was just, I think I would probably say that of all the Champions League campaigns, even the big hits that we've taken off the likes of PSG and whatever, the 3-0, maybe just because we weren't aware of the qualities that the team had, that was as bad a half as I ever remember watching Celtic in Europe.
Oh, it was a tragic one to watch, and the thing was, most fans, me myself included, I fancied our chances in this one because you're playing a team that are relatively unknown, the only Ukrainian team that really made any sort of contribution to European football at that point during the sort of like early 2000s was Dynamo Kiev with Shevchenko and Rebrov. So when we just Shakhtar Donetsk, you're like, we should beat them, but you look at some of the players that they had, like they had Alano, who went on to play for Man City. But just before Man City got taken over by, is it the
new guy, wasn't it?
Aye, because it was Thaksin Shinawatra or something like that. He was like Thailand or something. He took over, and Sven Goran was managed. They had Alano. They also had guys like Timoshuk, the Ukrainian midfielder.
Oh, that's right.
They had the Croatian international goals as Pleticosa or something, or Pletkovic, something along those lines. They had a guy called Metuzalem in midfield. He was an absolute baller. Brandao up front.
Oh, Brandao, I can always remember him.
And of course, the unfortunately named Razvan Rat at left back. I don't know if that's a common second name in Romania. I'm not sure. But yeah, they had some real good players, and we found that out the hard way. Unfortunately, they absolutely they ragdolled us essentially, and it was. And funny thing enough, we played them again a few years later, and I can remember the first half in that one. It was damage limitation after 10 minutes. Yeah, we didn't seem to learn our lesson a few years later, but yeah, they showed us right away that they are a good side and not to be overlooked just because we hadn't heard of them at that point. They were oil rich, and they were definitely flexing their muscle with the team they had.
I think you're absolutely bang on, and I think as well, Fran. I mean, obviously Shakhtar playing obviously they're not playing in Ukraine at the moment for the horrific circumstances, as we all know. But they obviously play at the Donbass Arena now, the big one that they built for Euro 2012. It's an amazing stadium, but back then I can't even remember the name of the stadium now, but it was a proper, a kind of backwater, and I think that's why perhaps a lot of fans thought this is going to be the game that we'll get back in the group and whatever. But unfortunately, we got given a bit of a footballing lesson.
It's like you said, they were going up against the unknown. Thought, well, they're obviously an unknown for a reason, so we'll get 3 points off them and stuff. But little did we know that they were oil rich to God knows what. Like just your Man Cities, your PSGs, they were the early ones of them, really, doing all that nonsense. And like you say, they didn't have like the sort of work permit restrictions, so that's how you had all these top Brazilians that were maybe going to Ukraine first before coming over. Maybe it would have been Italy still then, and maybe occasionally they would pop up in England, but they were still just going to Italy and sort of Spain and Germany and things like that. But Shakhtar managed to flex their muscle a bit with the money and spending still money, like you say. Guys like, I don't think Fernandinho wouldn't have been there, but then it would have been too early for him. But it was just, I can remember that guy Metuzalem. He was an absolute player. Like you say, Timoshuk, I think he played against us later on and things like that. But just throughout the years, they actually they had so many players. But I think they had a guy called Evander or something, or Evander as well, and just all these mad, proper Brazilian type names that you'd think in that, and they were all just absolute proper balls. Like you say, it was the second half, they just absolutely blew us away that game.
They certainly did. So you're sitting there 0 points from a possible 9 from 3 games, and it's needless to say you could be forgiven for thinking all was lost and that this tournament was going to completely run away from us. And as some of the guys have alluded to in the comments, their domestic form by this time in the year wasn't great either. We were dropping points even at home. Obviously our massive 77 game unbeaten home record, which ran from 2001 to 2004, had came to an end earlier on in the previous campaign after the league had already been won to Aberdeen. Aberdeen then came down and beat us again in the autumn as well. So things definitely, and obviously we know that by the end of the season Martin would be gone, and it was around the time that there were sort of rumours that things perhaps not everyone was seeing eye to eye behind the scenes. There you go. Geos to there you go. But from that, relative despair, Phil comes up, quite an inspiring story and an amazing fight back from all concerned. As they proved in years gone by, we didn't fear anyone on our night. We were more than a match for anybody. So Operation Save Our European campaign was to begin on match night 4 at home to Shakhtar, the return game. Not one of the famous European nights, but something that we will all remember it for is something that we should have got on Saturday, actually, had the referee known the rules of the game. We scored from an indirect free kick. The Shakhtar goalkeeper was deemed to have held on to the ball longer than the approved 6 seconds.
6-second rule, yeah.
That's it, the old 6-second rule. And from that, Alan Thompson did what he did best, and from a set piece, put the ball in the corner, low in the corner, and we were back in it. And from that, we won the game 1-0. We were more than with a shout of a UEFA Cup place.
We were. It was, if I remember right, when the free kick gets awarded, there's quite a panic from the Shakhtar players because they know that we've got Alan Thompson there with that left foot. He's just going to rifle it, and they weren't stopping it no matter how many people they put on the line. But the weird thing is with that group and the way it was structured, sometimes for a team like us, it's good to have a group where you've got 2 teams that are just way better than the other 2, and you can just have a straight out fight for the third place. Because Shakhtar, the only points they'd got at that point was against us as well, so it was becoming evident because Milan and Barca were pulling away into the distance. It was like, right, we've still got a chance here, because you don't think Shakhtar are going to get many more points in this group, do you? That's what you're fighting. So it's like, we've still got a home game with Milan to come. We're good at home, and they've still got to play Barca and Milan at this point. And you just think, nah, we've actually got a shout now, because the way that group has just fell and the way it's structured. So sometimes those can be a benefit, providing the other team doesn't throw a wee spanner in the works. And we'll get to that.
well, that's it. You're bang on, Phil. And Franny, it's funny enough that you were mentioning the fact that it was the kind of straight shootout. I felt that very much we lost the game in the end, but I felt very much that the home match against Leipzig this year had the similar kind of feel as to what it did playing Shakhtar that night, where it felt that the group was perhaps getting away from us a little bit, but if we were to win that match, we could be right back in contention. Even if it was for a third place finish. Now, that Celtic team got a 1-0 victory. Sadly, we didn't manage that this year. But it just goes to show you fine margins at this level.
Teams are in this competition for a reason. There's not really any poor teams in it. And it's funny how Shakhtar threw a spanner in the works this season and threw a spanner in the works the season we're talking about. It's almost like the stars align. But it's like you say, we expected Real Madrid to run away with this season. They did to an extent, but Shakhtar picked up some mental results. They got Leipzig at the perfect time. We could have probably done the fixtures as much as we wanted to start the campaign at home to Real Madrid. Can't ask for anything better, but I think on hindsight, hindsight could have been doing with Leipzig starting at home when they were still going a wee bit through their bad period. But it was Shakhtar at that time had 3 points, I think, in the group, because obviously they'd lost their 2 games. And then obviously, like you say, that Alan Thompson goal, so it puts you on level points. I can't remember if back then it still went with a head-to-head or it was goal. I think it was
goal difference at that stage.
I think it was goal difference at that stage. So you were, like say, you were still hoping for Shakhtar to have lost the next 2 games by decent margins a wee bit. But like we say, they end up throwing a spanner in the works. But the game itself was a bit of a scrappy one. I think that free kick happened quite early on or something, the first 20 minutes or something.
It was 20 minutes, yeah.
It was mad, but it was just, I think the stadium a wee bit, I watched it on telly, it was, nobody really knew what was happening, because obviously the 6-second rule, it wasn't really applied. It was one of the ones that just, like that, unlike Saturday, the ruling was applied, but like you say, Alan Thompson, for anywhere between there and about 30 yards, he was absolutely lethal with that left foot, especially with a set piece where he's almost just running up and just scalping it as hard as he can. And you tend to see a lot of the ones that either get ballooned away over the bar or somebody just takes one for the team. But just something about Alan Thompson, he found a gap where there wasn't one. It was just, he always just seemed to manage to do it, and it got the campaign made the campaign look a wee bit. Yeah, you're still bottom of the group, but with 3 points on the board with a home game coming up against AC Milan, we just thought, well, here we go again.
Well, that's it. And if we had a spark of hope after the first game, after the turn leg to Shakhtar, Franny, we were on positive cloud 9 after the next result, because after all the years of being turned over away from home at so many different grounds all over the continent, nobody, I think even the most positive of us, gave ourselves any hope of that changing at all in the next game. I remember I didn't even see the game. I was at a Kanye West concert of all things. College dropout 204. What a time to be alive, man. Before he went into proper Space Cadet mode. But you know, we couldn't believe it. I thought maybe we're on the same drugs as Kanye was clearly on at the time, because news had filtered through that Celtic had drawn 1 each with Barcelona in the Nou Camp with Magnus Hedman in goals. Tell me how that happened.
I didn't know. The simple answer is I didn't know. Like, what I can remember, it was a typical Barcelona dominating the game. We had our chances. We had chances, but it was just one of the free kicks that, like, to this day, I'm adamant John Hartson was offside with that. I think he's offside. I don't know. I think he's, but you take it. It was just one of the free kicks that are swung out of the back post, and sometimes you just, like, a couple of guys maybe get a flick on. Sometimes didn't really change the direction of the ball, but it just, the keeper, it's one of the ones where the keeper can't really move, because if he moves, then it does just do that inevitable thing where it works its way to the back post. He's away, got the near post in weight position. He's just got to gamble, hoping like somebody maybe gets a touch on the way he's hoping it going. It was one of the ones that just kind of floated over, and I think it was maybe Varga that maybe got a flick on it or something, and there was Hartson just standing at the back post, and I think it came off his knee in the way, and I don't know how it was one of the ones that just got in the road of it. Knew he had to get it in and got in the road of it, and we managed to hold off this time, Anthony. I mean, I think it was a wee bit later than the Milan game, wasn't it? I think it was slightly later. I'm not 100% sure. I think so.
Well, that's the thing, Fulton. It's maybe a good thing that Stephen's just backstage doing the comments tonight, because he would be telling us that that's how you play away from home in Europe. You have to be defensively minded, and you'll get the fruits of your labour. What do you make of that? I mean, it's obviously Martin's team were known for being big and physical. They obviously had, the likes of Petrov, etc., that were very skillful. But that team was sort of built on being strong for the back and letting the creative players have the freedom to do what they needed to do, most of the time with devastating effect. But I don't think any of us were expecting our first points away from home in the Champions League to be at the Camp Nou.
No, definitely not. If you had to pick one ground to, where we get our first point, I don't think anybody in their right mind to be get put away in an insane asylum if they'd said, the Nou Camp, that'll be the first place that we get our points, because that was one of those backs to the wall performances again, where we just have to defend at all costs. Because we went behind early, Samuel Eto'o scored. And you're thinking, this could be a bad one here. We would take our trouncings at the Nou Camp in years to come, but yeah, obviously Hartson's goal, and I agree with Franny. I remember when the goal went in, you do feel like it just felt so easy for him that you feel like there's got to be a catch here. There has to be something, like you're waiting for an offside flag or whatever, but yeah, it was just so easy for him just to tap it in at the back post. But yeah, we held on, and Barcelona must be scratching their head at the end going, that's twice in this calendar year that they came to this ground and we can't beat them. What's going on? Just
and by the way, kudos to as much as he's a bit of a joke figure at the club to a certain extent, but you do have to give Magnus Hedman praise that night, because it didn't quite maybe live up to the miraculous display of David Marshall a few months before, but he still had a brilliant game that night. I remember him making 2 or 3 pretty top draw saves. I know perhaps Roy Keane would say, well, he's a top international goalkeeper, that's what he's supposed to do, but you've got to give credit where it's due. And absolutely. It's also, we also beat Barcelona years later with Efe Ambrose at the back, so such is life. And there's Steve. I knew he couldn't resist. He definitely had to get the we need to be defensively minded in there. It's all about opinions, Captain. It's all about opinions. And from there, going into the final game at home against the soon to be European champions in a couple of years after this. Phil. But the thing is with that AC Milan team, and somebody here. I'll take it. That's very rare I get a compliment like that, Monty, so I'll take that. No, thanks very much. Brilliant. And so get into the final game, guys, sorry. And it's AC Milan at home. The AC Milan team, as you say, Phil, the Pro Evo AC Milan team, with all the world stars.
Yep.
But like we've talked about earlier, the fact of who we were at the time, our previous campaigns under Martin, we feared nobody, and buoyed on by that point in the new camp, we knew that of course Barcelona are going to knock 7 saves of shite out of Shakhtar Donetsk. So all we need to do is try and match or better that result with the home crowd behind us. I remember it was a fantastic atmosphere that night. I think the Undertones played pre-match as well to get the crowd going. But in the days before, we had Liam McGrandles to sort of get us going before a match. We had the Undertones from Ireland, and it was a fantastic atmosphere. And Aidan McGeady stole the show that night in the first half, taking on all the Nestas and the Maldinis of this world, and with absolute no fear. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get the ball in the back of the net.
That's the thing with McGeady, and you're right. Young player playing without fear. Sometimes you just throw them in there, and they can have forms like that. Look at David Marshall earlier in the year at the U camp. His first start for the club. A youngster just thrown in there because we had to put him in for that one. And you go in there without fear, no real pressure on you because nobody's expecting you to deliver the way you do. And McGeady that night showed what he was all about. But the experience for that one, my experience for the AC Milan game is, I was at a Kasabian concert that night. Where you were saying you were at a Kanye concert for the Barca one. I went to see Kasabian at the Barrowlands that night. Phenomenal concert, but we came out of there and somebody had said got it on the phone just before the social media day and age, but somebody got a text message when the phone signals were starting to come back when you get out of the Barrowlands, and Celtic have drawn 0-0, and of course you'd think a point would have put us on 5 points for it. That'll be enough to get us through, but then we were quickly told that Shakhtar had beaten Barcelona 2-0 with Championship manager legend Julius Agahauer scoring a brace. A very Championship manager aficionados out there remember Julius Agahauer. He was a baller of a player as well. But 2-0 to Shakhtar, and again, only this can happen to Celtic, where they threw a spanner in the works, and off we were out the trophy, out the cup. Sadly, at the first hurdle this year, 4th place.
I think that's what perhaps, and even I remember the campaign well. But it's always when you think of Martin's campaigns in the Champions League, Franny, you think of the debut season with the unknown, and not getting through with 9 points despite winning all our home games. We then had the disappointment and heartache in Lyon, but sandwiched in between that with the UEFA Cup final appearance. So when you think all of that, there's then Martin's final season. We finished 4th. To start with, you would just think, that must have been a really disappointing campaign. And obviously was, but it was by no means disgraced ourselves with a very poor result away from home against Shakhtar. But even the other 2 games, the other matches against both of the giants of European football, we certainly punched and gave as good as we got, and just came up short a little bit in the end.
Well, what I can remember that game, we certainly went toe-to-toe with that Milan team. I think it could have been any score. Like, Milan had plenty of chances, and we had a lot of chances. I think if it was 3-3, folk would have been like, I get that, seeing that game. It was a fairly open game. Pirlo just in the middle, pulling the strings, and then just a typical Martin O'Neill performance away from Europe, where it was a wee bit basically it was get it to the wide men, get crosses in, and it was causing European teams ball. It's not really the fashionable way to play anywhere with the whole 4-4-2, get it wide, get tons of crosses in. But I can just remember McGeady was absolutely ridiculous that night. I think it would it have been Cafu or Zambro? I can't remember who, but I just heavily had it right back, had him on toast, and he also done that wee turn on Nesta. I can remember that one where he just, whatever it is, spins it round, takes it on his left foot, and absolutely done Nesta, and you're like, mate, do you realise what you're doing here? This is Alessandro Nesta here. See, when you come up against Kirk Broadfoot, going to pretend he's Nesta, because you never go by him.
McGeady retired Maldini. Superb, Stephen.
Aye, and buddy, Broadfoot retired McGeady. I've never seen McGeady, like, it was horrendous against Rangers. I can never remember a good game against Rangers. And you see him against guys like your Maldinis, your Nestas and all that, and you're like, you realise what you've done to these boys, man. They couldn't get near you, and you can't turn it on against guys like Broadfoot and that. It was ridiculous. But it was just one of the nights where you just needed a Pippo and Zaga type goal, something just to hit off you. Just go in, gear something. But it wasn't to be. But obviously, I was watching the game on the telly, so I'm sitting there knowing what's happening. Oh, you had the old teletext back then, just checking the score, so you knew what was kind of happening in the other game. You're like, we just, at the time you're going, as much as obviously I want to win the game's great, you're like, even if we win this at this stage, it's not good enough, because we're like, they're winning 2-0. They're absolutely winning 2-0. A win's not good enough, but you're like, it was one of the games where they gave everything to get the result they needed, but it wasn't to be. You were the level of opposition you were up against. It was one of them. You just didn't have that killer instinct in the box for it.
That's it. And as I say, I think had we perhaps won the game that night, I think the atmosphere at that game would have maybe been remembered more by a lot of the fans than perhaps it is. When you think of the top nights of the current, the Champions League era, most fans will probably say Barcelona, Juventus, but possibly even Manchester City that night. It was a great game. But I just remember that night being incredible. The noise before that game was, and like you say, the way they started, when McGeady turned doing all the tricks, it had all the ingredients for one of those proper. I mean, there's always special. It's always special a European night at Celtic Park, especially in the Champions League.
Spartak Moscow was one of the best ones I've been at.
Moscow, yep, absolutely. That was up there, the penalty shootout.
Aye,
definitely. I'm looking forward to talking about that, and then one of the next couple of rewinds away, but definitely it's going to be one of the good moments. Probably the most nerve-wracking night. Certainly up there that you'll ever have at Celtic Park. But as I say, everyone was there for a special night, and it was very good. It just wasn't great in terms of just getting the result and putting us into I think what's so disappointing is you just never know. That team were still capable of going on a decent run in the UEFA Cup. I don't think we maybe would have got to a final again. But a decent draw. The Suttons and the Hartsons and the Petrovs of this world were more than a match for anybody. We would have had
Bellamy
in the January window. We would have been more than a match for any team, and we certainly wouldn't have shown any fear. But needless to say, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. So for the first time in Champions League history, we finished 4th from 4 with 5 points. Shakhtar on 6 with that last match night 6 victory over Barcelona pipped us to 3rd place. Barcelona finished with 10 points, and the Pro Evo AC Milan team finished on 13. So we can always say that we took one of the greatest footballing sides ever. We held them to a draw at our own pitch. We very nearly did the same in the San Siro. But special times, and spearheaded, Phil, by a very, very special manager. For many, I would probably say myself included, still out with, obviously you have Jockstein, nobody's going to ever come close to that man's achievements, but I think in the modern era, for me, Martin O'Neill's still the godfather. You still look at the way he was loved, and heralded when he came back there on Trophy Day in May. The fans of long before they were born, he had left the dugout, but he was still getting absolutely hounded for selfies and photographs and everything else when he was coming down the stairs to do the post-match presentation. He's just absolutely loved by the Celtic support, and it's understandable why. I mean, he came to Celtic Park on day one and said that he would do everything he possibly could to bring some success to the club. 3 league titles, 3 Scottish Cups, a League Cup, 3 Champions League campaigns, and of course the small matter of taking us to our first European final in 33 years when we went to Seville to take on Porto. Jose Mourinho's Porto, who went on to win the Champions League the year after, and that's just the basic maths. But when you think of everything else, he's a record that still stands to this day: 25 league games in a row, straight wins in the 2003-04 season, a season which was also 7 victories in a row against Rangers, one from the season before, and then we won all 6 games against them that year. He says that you can't afford to rely on history. You've got to go out and make your own. Well, I think it's safe to say he certainly did that in his time at Celtic Park.
Oh, for a shadow of doubt, the best team as well, and for our lifetimes, so that Celtic side that he had was phenomenal. Because obviously you can draw some comparisons to obviously what Brendan Rodgers achieved when he came up here, and you've got to look at what Martin was up against. I mean, I personally do love the Brendan Rodgers era because I was based on being a season ticket holder. That was the most enjoyable time I've had as a season ticket holder because I've got mine in 2007. So Strachan was manager, so I didn't go to many games during the O'Neill era. So I had to live basically through watching it on the television. But in terms of what he was up against and what he achieved, when you look at that illegally spending Rangers side, shall we say, they found some loopholes here and there to exploit. And the players that they were bringing in, and the very first season that he had, you just need to look at it. The 2000, they finished 21 points or something behind Rangers, and then he comes in that summer, and by the summer of 2001, we've won the treble, and I think we've won the league by 20-something points as well. It was a massive swing to turn it around, and I see you're up against an absolute powerhouse, that Dick Advocaat Rangers team. And then he did have his problems when Alex McLeish came in. For some reason, Alex McLeish's Rangers side had some sort of Indian side over them, but they just couldn't find a victory for about a year. So there was a couple of times where we fought against them, but again, he found a way to change the system and so forth, and found a way to beat them. And some of the memories that he gave us along the way, I mean, the Seville run in itself, a season where we won no trophies, there was no tangible physical trophy at the end of it, of all the competitions we entered, but it's still, to this day, one of the best seasons any of us have experienced, and I think that speaks volumes as well. Just how good that era and that time was, where you can have a season where you didn't win anything. You had to run to the UEFA Cup final, and that means more than trophies. It really does. Some of the memories and some of the along the way were absolutely phenomenal. What a man, Martin O'Neill.
You're absolutely spot on. I mean, so much as football supporters, Franny, all you want is the great memories to have, and thankfully as Celtic supporters we don't have any shortage of them. But as Phil says, but it's ironic that a club where success is a drug that you can never have too much of, it's a season in which we didn't actually win any silverware that so many look back with the fondest memories. I mean, we a lot of the time just call that team the Seville team, which is crazy that there's a name for a team that on that calendar year didn't win anything. But in the years in between and before and after, I'm sure that we definitely put plenty of pots in the trophy cabinet. They were just, as Phil says, a special side, special players, and Martin alongside John Robertson and Stevie Walford were a fantastic, management trio. And we've heard from, as years have gone by, a lot of the players of that generation, they speak at, the supporters' dinners and whatnot. And what a common thread seems to be from them all is that, it was very much the coaching. Monday to Friday was John Robertson and Stevie Walford's domain. Martin's job was to, he would come along on a Friday, get a progress report, pick the team, and do the business on a Saturday, which to us almost sounds, very aloof and perhaps not as hands-on as what you would expect a lot of perhaps the modern coaches to be. But by the same token, whenever a lot of these players also speak, they say that his greatest gift was just before going out the tunnel, and some of his pre-match speeches, and I can think of off the top of my head the 6-2 game, the game against Liverpool at Anfield, the second leg in the UEFA Cup run. There's just times when the players say, Martin, perhaps a bit like Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, he just had the knack for saying the right thing at the right time.
I can remember, what would that have been, about 16, 17, I think, when he came in. And it was, obviously, you were just kind of getting Sky in that, and it was weird how welcomed they were. Like, everybody knew we'd got a special manager. I think when Martin O'Neill came in, you knew you'd got a proper calibre of manager, and obviously went on to show that. And like you say, it's his management style. If you knew what you knew then, probably, I think if he wasn't getting the success, you'd be going, you need to be more at the training ground here, mate, and getting involved. But like, if you're getting the success, you manage the team however you want to manage the team. Like, who are we to say this is the right way? Brett brung in trophies, got us done as well in Europe and stuff. So And if you're still keeping guys like Larsson, Hartson, and Sutton happy, you must be doing something right and things like that. So I'm something you like Seville year, as much as we didn't win anything, is probably up there with my favourite time as being there, because simply I was 18, I think. 18 at the time, so it was my first away trip, really proper away trip, to go and see Celtic, because I just wasn't allowed beforehand with my mum and with my dad, no driving and things like that. It was just wasn't one of the things. But I ended up going away with my uncle. Just was like that. He phoned me up, was like, "You want to go?" And I was like, "Aye, we're going. Just however we do it, we're going." And funny enough, we actually drove from Paris all the way down to Seville. That's we flew to Paris and drove all the way down and drove all the way back. But what an experience! Just to be. I never had a ticket for the game, but we're in the sort of fan zone. But for me, Martin O'Neill has to be the manager of the era. There's no questions about it, really. Like Brendan Rodgers, brilliant, absolutely getting no way for it. I wish I had the foresight to fall, because I gave up my season ticket in Brendan Rodgers' first season. What a shocker I had. Well, it'd been Dyler's last season. I was like, nah, I've had enough of this. Even though we were winning things, I was like, was probably of the generation now where they see a lot of success and just expect more. And I probably didn't quite properly appreciate Dyler, so to say. And then I was like, nah, giving up my season ticket, I'm sticking to the golf. And Brendan Rodgers popped up about 2 months later, and I'm like, tried to get my ticket back, and there was absolutely no chance of it. And the rest is history, I say, Anthony. We're on waiting lists these days for a season ticket. But Martin O'Neill, what a character. And if you want a more in-depth look at him, check on the Nostalgia one. I think Phil done 3 episodes on him, and we know how long the Nostalgia goes for, so you need a week anyway.
They were all about 3 hours. He definitely didn't get the ending that he deserved, though, the way that season ended. I mean, the cup final we had was just a mere trinket. It was a pure damp squibby cup final.
I think everybody knew he was away as well, eh?
Yeah, it was. It definitely didn't deserve that, but that's what it is. We won't talk about the H word, about that vehicle that flies in the air. We won't talk about that.
Absolutely not.
No.
Well, do you know, funnily enough, when I was in the superstore with my wee boy at the Dundee United game, and obviously they've got a lot of the Christmas gifts collections and whatnot out, and Celtic have got their own brand of Lego going out at the minute, and there's some cracking sets, don't get me wrong, but one of them's you get the team bus, you get the stadium, fair enough, the dressing room, and there's a helicopter now as well. I was like, whose idea was that?
Because we got it with Henrik Heswick when he scored against Dundee United, we know, but it was one of the ones where we pretty much knew we were going to do it. I think.
That's it. We've never had it swing back in our favour like they sadly did that year. But as I say, they've only won it about 2 or 3 times since, didn't they? So, they can have a wee loan of it for a while. It's back where it belongs now, and I'm very sure it ain't going anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, I'm the same. I wasn't in Seville, unfortunately. My dad's, very much a man of educated. He says, you've got to go and do your PE exam that week. So the day the Seville match, I was in St Kent's doing my PE exam in the morning. I think, funnily enough, we were talking about it at the weekend there, and I took one look in the mirror. I was going, what was the fucking thought process behind that? What good is a PE exam going to do for me? Where was that going to get me more? But, needless to say, I wasn't there, but, plenty of magical memories along the way.
I patched my geography higher to watch England-Argentina in the 2002 World Cup. It was on at the same time, and it's like, I could go in and do this exam that I'm probably going to fail, or I could watch England-Argentina. So I choose the football. But England won that game, so I'm kind of thinking,
right.
Probably should have went in for the exam, actually.
Can you point to where Argentina geography is on the map?
I can do that. So
what did you need geography for?
Exactly.
What did you need geography
for? Absolutely. Well, that kind of brings it to an end, boys, after a wee tribute to the gaffer there. That kind of wraps up season 2004-2005 Champions League Rewind. The next one we'll be doing, of course, will be season 2006-07. We'll have it with a new manager at the helm, Gordon Strachan, a whole new team, essentially. Obviously, in the year in between, we had no European football whatsoever, but give the wee man his due. I think he more than made up for that with some of the memories that he gave us in Europe. And that glass ceiling of the last 16, we finally smashed it and made it through to the knockout stages. 2 seasons in a row. So we've got plenty to look forward to in the upcoming rewinds, which will let you guys and the viewers know much about when we're planning on doing them. And just to let people know as well, although there is no domestic action now until the 17th of December, we obviously have the World Cup coming up. Endless Celts isn't stopping. There'll be content on at least the usual Monday night and Friday nights at 8 o'clock. And we're going to maybe try and, if there's weekend shows we can fit in, etc. I think the plan is to perhaps do one this Sunday. We'll be back on Friday night, but we might be doing one on Sunday morning as well, ahead of the start of Qatar at 22. So you will get plenty content from the Endless Celts as well. So, and Phil, I'll just let you answer Kaiser there with regards to you guys' show, the Voice of Us.
Russell requires some strepsils. His throat is a bit sore tonight, so he's put it back 24 hours. So it's going to be one of those Monday clubs on a Tuesday. We've not done one of them for a while, Monday on a Tuesday. We have Bhoys Bus tradition. Every so often, one comes along with the Monday clubs on the wrong day completely. We still call it the Monday club in a totally unironic way. But yeah, it's tomorrow. His throat's a bit sore tonight, so he's putting it back a wee bit.
That's right. Well, I hope he's feeling better soon. And thanks again to yourself for coming on, Phil. Have you enjoyed it?
Always do, mate. Yeah, always happy to come on and get a good chat about the Celtic. So yeah, thanks for having me on again, guys.
No problem, mate. Anytime. And what about yourself, Franco? Are you glad to be doing the Monday shift with me again?
It's always good to get on the Monday shift. It's coming a good habit. I think we'll need to stay on it, Anthony, because like we say, the last couple Celtic have extended the lead, so maybe it's a wee omen.
It's I think so. Yeah, I think we need to keep that up once the domestic action resumes. I think, but of course that'll be the captain's decision when he gets on doing all the schedule. But that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks again for watching, and some of the guys will be back with the usual show on Friday night at 8 o'clock. So until then, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, that.